So, what I'm trying to do here is I'm kind of reimagining O&B, and I'm basing it very heavily off of PBS Frontline.
Okay, I'm with you.
So, let's go back. Late 2000s, early 2010s.
Okay.
You get involved in the atheist secular community and decide that satire is your best inroad into that community.
This is true.
What is it about satire that prompts you to say this is something that I think the community needs?
Well, that's a good question. I think that there are a lot of people who go head-to-head against theists. There are people who just like to use facts. And the nature of comedy, as you well know, we've had this discussion many times, the nature of comedy is that it goes around defenses, around psychological defenses, and hits you where you live, which is your laugh, your funny bone. So, yeah.
So, how effective do you think that's been?
I've had millions of views on my blog, as you well know, and it's a difficult metric to gauge. Though it is possible to run experiments of double-blind experiments of having people watch videos like of George Carlin or to read satirical posts, and then have someone give like a verbal argument against a particular against religion, let's say. And there are definitely ways you could run or make an experimental design to test it. That being said, I think it's effective. I think it is effective to make people think about things in ways that they haven't in the past.
What are the bits that you think are more effective about the ways you do things than some other commentators in the space?
Let me think about that for a minute. Well, once again, it's about what I do is more art than about attacking certain points head on. So I would say, and this is, as I've gotten older, what I realize is that our stories, our personal stories, are just as effective as the facts of an argument. So there's a reason why Christians tell people to do testimony. There's a reason why people share their stories, is because we are a storytelling species, and that's what changes hearts and minds as against the hard data. So the funny little stories that I tell on the blog resonate with people in that way. So that affects people in ways that maybe the quote-unquote traditional atheists don't. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. When you say traditional atheists, what are the traditional arguments that you were hearing that you feel were less efficacious than what you're doing?
Well, the traditional atheist argument is to go point by point and regarding the Bible in terms of going through anti-apologetics. So, Christian or evangelicals or certain types of Christians will have these apologetics, and many quote-unquote traditional atheists will go and hit them point by point and arguing each and every point. And while that is important, don't get me wrong, and we need people like that, I felt my main strength was to go around those arguments and to hit people where they live.
So more of a rather than be the one who debunks the Gish Gallop, you're just going to kind of rise above it and make some kind of overall statement that engages emotionally.
Right, because I'm a one-man operation here. I've always said that I run an asymmetrical war, an asymmetrical conflict against the organizations, the meme, bad brains in general. So the best bang for my buck is to use satire, because it really is what I feel. I don't really feel like I do comedy, and a lot of people would agree with that. But what my main goal is to comfort the afflicted, and to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And so I happen to do that with satire, that's what it's made for. That's what the art is made for. Yeah.
So what is it about satire in particular that you feel achieves that goal best?
Well, I was in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and I was looking at the Arab art exhibit that they have there, and I was reading about one of their old docents there, one of the old organizers of that exhibit, and what I read really resonated with me is that she said art should be like a whip. It should be like a whip, and it should strike people to get their attention. I think satire does that in ways, and comedy does that also, but satire does that in particular ways, because satire, just like a lot of comedy, that's like a magic trick, right? A magic trick is all built on deception to do the trick. So satire, there's a series of tricks that you do to make a point. Yeah. So that's what's special about satire. It's a little magic trick. That's what it is.
Maybe by a series of points, like.
Yeah. So people don't know people don't know what the trick is until the trick's done, and that is pretty remarkable. And you can see I have a couple of posts right now blowing up, and there are people arguing about the fictitious happenings of the posts, and then there are people who are going, no, if you read this properly, then you would know that this is a satirical piece. So there's this whole interplay, and I think that I'm achieving many more things with rigging a system like that, where people are forced to read and think and to talk to each other, than me just spouting out facts.
So you feel like it's a better way to engage the readers, because it gives them something to discuss other than just the straight facts of the article.
Right. Because it isn't just the idea about talking to the other side, right? In these satirical posts, I'm not only preaching to the choir, but I'm also talking to the congregation at the same time. And that's pretty remarkable, because there are many so-called skeptics, or people who really are full of hubris, and who read the posts, they don't read it properly, and then they just kind of go off on a point from a satirical post. And there's a lesson there about how to read articles and how to think about things that you read online. So that assists our own skeptical community, while at the same time I'm making fun of some horrible circumstances in our society, or making fun of horrible organizations. I think you're on silent.
No, I'm not. I just haven't said anything yet.
Okay. That's a good thing. That's a good reason. Sure.
So what satirical products do you feel have been most efficacious for you in the terms of getting your message across? Not necessarily in terms of which ones got you the most clicks, but which ones do you feel are the ones that actually express your position best?
Well, those are the ones that probably haven't gotten the most clicks. The ones that, any person who works in this space, or whether it's YouTube or blogging or whatever, or any kind of performer, they realize that the most popular things that you do are not going to be the ones that you're the most comfortable with, or the ones that you've put the most work into. So my most popular things I've done have been just off the cuff, 5 minutes, 20 minutes worth of work, and as against to the things that took me an hour or two or more. I would say that the ones that have been the most effective, and I'm sorry if I'm saying this, but the most effective ones are, of course, the ones that have been shared as much, right? The ones that I feel personally I'm happy with. Like I've done a bunch of jokes about the Weimar Republic, right? When Trump first got elected, and yeah, no one paid attention to that. But I, you know, I feel like the Weimar Republic gets a lot of crap by historians, but it had a ton of problems it had to deal with. So that is a topic that I wanted to talk about. But the most effective thing to change hearts and minds, I have to tell you, just sharing my story, to tell you the truth, using what little popularity I have to tell my story. So the satire is kind of like a wedge, right? It's a wedge um, to get me eyeballs, and then I share my story, and I think that story helps people. It's probably the most um, probably in the amount of change I have seen with other people has been due to them seeing me on YouTube and communicating with me on YouTube, so I can actually see the change over time. Yeah, I'd say that.
In terms of change over time, if we go back to, again, late 2000s, early 2010s, where the atheist community was at then compared to where it's at now, all metrics say there's been a growth.
Yep.
But the community as a whole seems to want to hold on to that super underdog status.
Sure. Well, that's common for a lot of organizations. Well, there is truth in that. Is that in terms of here in the United States of America, of course, atheism as an institution is much smaller than, let's say, faith-based institutions. Even a religious institution like the Satanic Temple is much smaller than, let's say, the Southern Baptist Conference or Catholicism. So there is still an underdog status to us. Is it the same? Are we as small as we were 10 years ago? Absolutely not. But comparatively speaking, though we've grown, we are still the underdogs here in the States.
But you feel there's been progress?
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely. There's been progress. Yes, there has been progress. As society has progressed a bit, so has the atheist movement. I think there are more atheists who are more aware of the connection between progressive values, progressive politics, and the atheist movement in general. Like maybe 10 years ago, there were a lot more conservative atheists out there talking smack, and those ideas are bankrupt. Those ideas are bankrupt.
The nuance between separation of church and state and other political issues.
Yeah, I think there's been a maturity with that, especially with, but once again, there's always a churn, right? There's always some young guys, typically guys, a lot of typically young white guys out there who have their flirtation with big L libertarianism, or who don't understand big L libertarianism, and who are actually conservatives. They come up and they divert attention from the work that really needs to be done. That's always going to happen. That's going to happen every 10 years or so. But overall, the whole movement has moved more towards the left than anything else. And we have partly
the work that you think needs to be done.
Well, the work that has to be done. It is the boring stuff that I start talking about, and no one wants to pay attention to. No one wants to pay attention to gerrymandering. No one wants to pay attention to open elections, or ranked choice voting, or Puerto Rico getting statehood, or Washington D.C. statehood. And I'll tell you this too. This is not a secret. If you're a content creator who looks like me, and you start talking about your support for Black Lives Matter, no one's interested in hearing that, or very few people are interested in hearing that. As comparison to the larger atheist community, as soon as you start talking about Black Lives Matter, people just tune out, or you'll get far less clicks. So you have to Trojan horse that stuff into your content, if that's what you're doing, that's what I'm doing.
So talk about satire and Trojan horsing things into your what are the things what is the strategy for slipping that in with a satirical perspective?
Yeah, there is. Well, first, I mean, there is a cursory look at the blog and my work, and also the satirical videos that I've worked on. Typically, I pick out a personality, a common personality that we all dislike, that many people dislike. Let's say Ted Cruz, right? Or during the Trump era. Heaven forbid the first Trump era, if there's ever a second Trump era, it'd be the Donald J. Trump. And then you'd write something fantastical about that person. You'd write something, funny, something that's believable, but it yet reveals a truth. It reveals something, just like any other joke. It amplifies a characteristic or something horrible that they've done, and then you can have a chance in all that humor. You get to, for me, put in a couple of jabs about the hypocrisy of evangelicals or the Catholic Church, or some issues within the atheist community itself. Like, for example, I wrote one bit years ago that didn't get any traction either, about the local atheist who was going to an atheist meeting and didn't know which atheist clan he was going to, and so he was concerned about what topics he could bring up comfortably, because if you're in the skeptical group, if you're in the Penn Jillette libertarian lying, James Randi, may rest in peace, you're less likely to get friends and win friends and followers by talking about social justice issues, unfortunately. And if you're going into more of a humanist group, if you're visiting a more humanist group, then your firebrand atheism will not be welcome. I'll tell you that, because I've had both situations. I have walked into humanist meetings where I'm known at, and there's a chill. There's a chill, and there's definitely, I've gotten into arguments in the middle of TAM. To tell you the truth, the one time I've been to TAM, I got into some you got to be effing kidding me with what the crap you're talking about, young affluent kid who has no experience in life and doesn't know what they're talking about. Yeah, I've had both ends of the spectrum, and I think if you're doing your job as a skeptic, you are going to be poking at both camps, and that's the worst. I mean, and one of the things I dislike the most, and I've said this many times, is that I'm a second commandment atheist. I try not to build up idols. I try not to put people up on pedestals. And I try to undermine tribalism as much as I can, because that's the thing that messes up our bad brains, our chimp brains, is being more loyal to concepts, more loyal to the idols that we build or have other people build for us, than actual skepticism and thinking for ourselves, or being humane and feeling the feelings that we need to feel. Yeah.
So, again, going back to, I think more or less where we both made our entries into the general community, it seems to me that the most grievous mistake that I think was made along the line was not putting an A in STEM and making it STEAM.
Yeah.
Talk to the skeptical side of the line's lack of artistry, I think, is what I want you to do.
Exactly. There needs to be a communication and an exchange of strategies, right? Because in a strange way, I consider myself a big tent atheist, in the fact that I'm more than happy to talk with people who are just hardcore skeptics, as you can see on my YouTube channel, and I'm happy to talk with humanists. And there needs to be, both sides can learn from the other. So you have to be able to learn how to tell your story. You have to learn how to communicate if you're going to communicate with people on YouTube or in person or on print. If you are going to be talking about these matters, then you need how to get your rhetoric game going. And it isn't just about getting the facts. But if you're a humanist, then there is something to be said about looking at the data and figuring out that the data shows that just being nice is not an end unto itself. Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of the medium is the message there. Like, what you might say in a blog post is not the same thing you'd say on video, is not the same thing you'd say in a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And as a performer, I have different voices. So whatever I do on, let's say, the blog is very different from when I get, in front of the camera. Not that I'm not acerbic, not that I'm not, I get angry. Sure, I get angry on camera quite a bit, actually. But I feel that my voice on the blog is much more judgmental. I think that's a nice way of putting it, Jack Matirko. My voice on the blog is much more judgmental and biting than it is when I'm actually in front of people and talking with them.
Because there is sort of is that using satire to mask the thing that would make you not say that out loud? Like if you were at a dinner party with someone, you wouldn't say that part out loud, but if you couch it in a satire piece, it's almost, is there a little bit of passive aggression going on there as like a way to enter into that territory?
Yeah, I would say so. And there are different tricks. Having done stand-up too, it has informed how I interact with people in public. So just like the able to read people, able to understand where they're at, knowing or guessing at what kind of joke might resonate with them or what to say to help, make them on your side, because that's the goal, right? That's the goal when you're doing, even if you're saying something that's controversial, you can still get people on your side when you're interacting with them in person, or many times you can. And if you can't get them on your side, then maybe you can get the people around them to be more on your side.
But there's a difference between having that conversation interpersonally one-on-one versus a room full of people, which is the same kind of thing as you versus a blog audience, or you versus a YouTube audience, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah, with a blog, you only have a short amount of time to actually make your point, to get in and get out. Most people don't read. Most people scan. And so I feel like I have a short amount of time to really make a point, to make an emotional impact, to get in and out. On stage, I could have 5, 10, 20 minutes or more to make people laugh and try to weasel in some points here and there. So that's different. That's more longer format. And of course on YouTube, when we have conversations with people, it's allows the space that I don't have to fill every single moment with a joke or with a laugh, with a comedy point there. It's much more of a relaxed kind of experience, I think, for myself, for the audience, and of course whoever I'm talking to.
So what is your plan moving forward from here?
Well, that's a good question. I am exploring YouTube right now. I've been making an earnest effort in figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And I understand what works and what doesn't work on the blog. That I feel like I have a grasp on. But what works and what doesn't work on YouTube, I'm still exploring different ideas with. So it's just doing these tests, throwing stuff out there, seeing what resonates with people, and then trying to figure out what kind of entertainer, performer I want to be on YouTube. Because there are things I could do, and I could get probably more clicks if I wanted to, and that's debating people. I think that I have a skill set for debating people, and I could, but I don't know if that's where I want to be, because to compare other people in the comedy business, comedians just don't go out there to debate people. They're out there to perform their art, and that's what I would like to do. So I think I'm still going to be exploring exactly how to navigate YouTube, for the time being, for who knows how long. The YouTube channel's done well. I have been able to figure out a few things about the algorithm, which I'm relatively happy with. I've been doing it for less than a year, seriously. So I'm happy with my progress at this point.
But there's a clear line with where you identify in this space, as far as like, this is what I'm willing to contribute. That doesn't make me so uncomfortable. Like I'm happy doing this work in this direction, but not in this other direction, where I feel like it would be too much of a burden on me personally to engage in that kind of like debate structure.
Yeah, yeah. I can talk with people I don't agree with. That's not a problem for me. But I'm 52 years old, so I have to think about is my time and my energy best spent? Where do I like spending my time and energy to? And I would say that's with comedy and having conversations with people, basically. But if I do kind of fall into an argument or discussion, then I'm not afraid of doing that either. But I don't feel like that should be my bread and butter.
No, because that's too unpredictable.
Yeah, yeah. I've gotten into discussions with people before, but I mean, it's all in fun, and they've been not hardcore. They've been people within my own clique, so to speak. So we'll have discussions, and everyone's smiling at the end of it, and I'm more than happy to say that I'm an a-hole, and you can dislike me, and that's fine.
I'm just going to stop this test at that, because it was like 26 minutes exactly, and there was just like, people cannot like me, and that's fine, and I'm just going to kill it there.
That's good, man. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.